Today, we're diving into a really cherished tradition. It's observed by Muslims worldwide during Eid al-Adha. We're talking about the act of sacrifice, often known by, well, two main names, Udhiyah and Qurbani. And, a question often pops up. Are these two terms, Udhiyah and Qurbani, basically the same thing? Or are there maybe subtle differences we should know about? So our mission today is to really delve into the significance, unpack the purpose, and explore the Islamic rulings around it. Think of this as your shortcut, not just to know what it is, but to really grasp its vital place in faith and community.
That's exactly right. We're going to look at this act of worship from its history, its spiritual side, the community aspect, and clarify how these terms, Udhiyah and Qurbani, are actually used. The goal is for you to walk away with, a much richer understanding. It's a tradition connecting millions, after all. And just for clarity for everyone listening, when we say Allah, SWT, that's subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning glorified and exalted be he. And for prophets like Ibrahim, AS, it's alayhi salam, meaning peace be upon him, just so we're all on the same page.
Perfect context.
Okay.
So let's start with Udhiyah. What's the literal meaning, and what does it really represent during Eid al-Adha?
Right, udhiyah. It's an Arabic word, and literally it means sacrifice. Simple enough. But in the context of Eid al-Adha, it's much more than that simple translation. It refers to the specific ritual sacrifice of an animal, usually a sheep, goat, maybe a cow or camel. And crucially, it's done purely for the sake of Allah, SWT. It's an act of, deep devotion and gratitude. But what's really, really at the heart of Udhiyah, it isn't just the physical act. It's the story behind it, the origin. It directly commemorates Prophet Ibrahim's, peace be upon him, his incredible faith, his willingness, his readiness to sacrifice his own son, Ismail, all in obedience to Allah's command. It's quite something. And then, as the story goes, Allah mercifully intervened, providing a ram instead. This isn't just history. It's like the foundation of this act of trust.
Wow. Yeah, that story, the emotional weight is just immense, isn't it? The absolute trust needed to even consider following that command.
Right.
It really makes you think about your own attachments. But what are we truly willing to put first for our faith? So yeah, it's definitely not just about an animal. It's about this huge faith, this radical submission. It prompts some deep reflection for sure.
Exactly, precisely. Udhiyah embodies that submission to Allah's will, absolutely. But it's also, you could say, a profound spiritual exercise, a living challenge to our own levels of trust and gratitude. It makes us actively think about the blessings we have, the ones we maybe take for granted sometimes. So it serves as this tangible, yearly reminder of his blessings, fostering gratitude, humility. It really moves belief from passive to active.
Okay, so after this powerful act, this demonstration, what comes next? There's a big emphasis on sharing, right? That seems integral to Eid.
Oh, absolutely. This is where the compassion really comes alive, you could say, where the act becomes communal. A central part, maybe the most beloved part of Udhiyah, is distributing the meat from the sacrificed animal. Traditionally, it's divided into 3 equal parts. 1/3 for your own family, another 1/3 for relatives and friends. And that final, crucial 1/3 is specifically for the poor and needy. It's not just custom. It's like a built-in social ethic. And this sharing, it has this amazing ripple effect. It fosters this deep spirit of compassion, It strengthens community bonds within the family, yes, but also beyond. And it genuinely helps ensure that everyone, especially those who might be struggling, gets to share in the joy of Eid al-Adha. Imagine that, making sure nobody feels left out during a celebration. That shared joy, that collective well-being, it's fundamental. It's also worth mentioning there's some flexibility here. While the 1/3 split is traditional and definitely encouraged, you can choose to donate all the meat, give it all to those in need. This is quite similar to what pilgrims often do during Hajj with their sacrifices. They focus entirely on the charitable aspect. The core principle really is generosity, caring for others. The specifics can adapt a bit based on intention and circumstance.
Understanding that distribution really does highlight the compassionate heart of it all. But then the practical question comes up for many people. Is this something you have to do? Or is it more of a strong recommendation? Like, is Udhiyah mandatory if you have the means, or is it, highly encouraged?
That's a really important question, and it touches on, the nuance within Islamic legal thought or jurisprudence. You'll find different interpretations among scholars, which is pretty normal for matters of practice. There are basically 2 main views on the ruling, the hukum of Udhiyah. Okay, so one group of scholars sees it as wajib. That means mandatory, obligatory. For whom? For those who have the financial capacity, the nisab, to perform it, their reasoning often comes from specific prophetic traditions, hadith, that seem to stress it as an obligation if you're able. So for people following this view, it's a significant responsibility, something you plan for if you meet the criteria.
Okay, wajib. Mandatory for those who can afford it. What's the other view?
Right. The other main view, held by another significant group of scholars, is that it's mustahab. Mustahab means it's highly recommended, very virtuous, strongly encouraged, but not strictly obligatory. They really emphasize the immense reward, the spiritual benefit, but wouldn't say it's a sin to omit it if you genuinely lack the means, or even if you have the means but follow this interpretation. This perspective often focuses more on the spirit of generosity, the voluntary aspect of drawing closer to Allah through extra good deeds. It allows a bit more flexibility.
Right, mustahab. Highly recommended, huge reward, but not a strict obligation.
Exactly. And understanding this difference, wajib versus mustahab, it's not just, academic. It helps believers make informed choices based on their understanding and their situation. Some might feel that wajib really inspires that sense of duty, maybe even motivates more collective effort. Others might find mustahab resonates more with the idea of a heartfelt voluntary offering. But here's the key takeaway. Regardless of which specific ruling someone follows, there's a very strong universal emphasis on performing udhiyah if you do have the financial ability. It's seen across the board as this invaluable opportunity, a chance to express deep gratitude to Allah for everything, and of course to uphold a really cherished, deeply meaningful tradition of the faith.
That's a really clear explanation of the different views. It does show that balance between clear guidance and personal context in Islamic teachings.
Yeah.
Oh, so now let's bring in that other term, qurbani. How does that fit in? Is it just another word for udhiyah, or is there something different going on?
Yes, qurbani. This gets right back to your first question, doesn't it? Qurbani. Okay, so this term has roots in Urdu and Persian, languages spoken widely in, say, South Asia and other regions. And guess what? It also translates directly to sacrifice. And crucially, in the specific context of Eid al-Adha, it means the exact same thing as udhiyah.
The exact same thing.
The exact same thing. So when people talk about performing qurbani, they're referring to that same act, sacrificing an animal during the designated days of Eid al-Adha. Just like udhiyah, qurbani is done to commemorate Prophet Ibrahim's faith, his willingness to sacrifice, his obedience to Allah, the spiritual core. Identical.
Okay, so if the act, the purpose, the history, the meaning, if it's all identical, then that subtle difference we were wondering about, is it really just about language, about regional preference? Like, Udhiyah is the primary Arabic term, and Qurbani is maybe more common, more prevalent in places with Urdu and Persian influence. But they point to the very same tradition.
Precisely. You've nailed it. That's exactly it. The core spiritual act, why it's done, the story behind it, even how the meat is typically shared, it's all one and the same. The difference is purely linguistic, terminological, a matter of which word is more common in different parts of the Muslim world. Udhiyah in Arabic-speaking regions, often Qurbani in South Asia, Iran, and similar areas. It's actually a beautiful example, isn't it? How diverse cultures embrace and express the same fundamental acts of faith using their own familiar language.
It really is. That clarifies things perfectly. So same act, different word, depending on where you are, what language background you have. Okay, this leads to another interesting point. What about the Quran itself? How does it talk about sacrifice? Are these specific terms, Udhiyah or Qurbani, actually mentioned? Or is the idea there in other ways informing this practice?
That's a great question, digging into the scriptural roots. And the answer is interesting. The specific words Udhiyah or Qurbani aren't explicitly used in the Quran in this exact context. However, the concept of sacrifice, and especially the foundational story we've discussed, is definitely there. It's alluded to quite clearly. The principles are deeply embedded.
Okay, so the words aren't there, but the concept is. Where do we see that?
Well, the most direct reference, as we mentioned earlier, is in Surah Al-Safat, that's chapter 37, verses 100 to 107. These verses powerfully recount the story of Prophet Ibrahim's dream, his readiness to sacrifice his son, and Allah's intervention with the ram. Now, the verses don't label this act Udhiyah for Eid al-Adha, but the context, offering an animal in obedience to God, is crystal clear. This narrative is the spiritual bedrock.
Right, Surah Al-Safat, the core story.
Exactly. And beyond that specific story, you find broader principles related to sacrifice mentioned elsewhere, particularly in verses discussing the Hajj pilgrimage. Look at Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2. Various verses there touch upon the rituals and guidelines for animal sacrifice during Hajj.
Ah, okay. So Hajj sacrifices are mentioned.
Yes, things like fulfilling vows related to sacrifice, what kinds of offerings are acceptable, what to do if you can't complete Hajj and need to offer a sacrifice as an alternative. These verses might not be about Eid al-Adha sacrifice specifically, but they establish the legitimacy and importance of offering animals as worship, as charity, as fulfilling religious duties. They provide this broader framework, you see, a context for understanding sacrifice within Islam generally, which definitely includes the Eid al-Adha sacrifice.
So the Quran lays the groundwork, the principles, the main story.
Precisely. What's fascinating is how the Quran gives us the foundational principles, the spiritual core, the why. It provides the clear directive for these kinds of devotional acts. And then the specific terms like Udhiyah or Qurbani for this particular Eid tradition seem to have emerged and become common usage later on, building on that solid Quranic foundation. It shows that organic development of practice, always rooted firmly in revelation. The Quranic verses touch on the ethics, the sharing, the vows, all key themes we see in Udhiyah and Qurbani today.
This whole exploration has been incredibly insightful, really clarifies the terms and the deep roots. So let's try and bring it all together now, for us, for you listening today. What's the bottom line? Whether someone calls it Udhiyah or Qurbani, what's the lasting impact, the significance of carrying on this tradition?
Yeah, pulling it all together. The act of sacrifice during Eid al-Adha, whatever term you use, holds this immense multi-layered significance. It really does transcend time. First, and maybe foremost, it's a powerful way to remember and commemorate Prophet Ibrahim's incredible faith, his obedience. It's recalling that pivotal moment in our shared religious history. It serves as this constant, enduring lesson for all believers.
Remembering Ibrahim's example. Okay. What else?
Second, it's a very tangible way to express gratitude. Deep gratitude to Allah for his blessings, which are, let's face it, countless. In a world where maybe we focus a lot on what we lack, this is a deliberate act of giving thanks, a reminder to acknowledge and appreciate what we have been given.
Gratitude, that's huge.
Definitely. Third, and this is often the most visible aspect, it's about sharing. Sharing your blessings with those who have less. This directly contributes to a more equitable, a more joyful celebration for the entire community. It fosters that sense of collective well-being, making sure people aren't left out. It's like social justice woven right into the ritual.
Sharing and social justice.
Yeah.
Powerful.
Very. And finally, it just works to strengthen those community bonds. It builds solidarity. It fosters this beautiful spirit of compassion among people. It reminds us we're all connected, right? That we have a responsibility towards one another, extending that warmth and care beyond just our immediate family circle.
Remembrance, gratitude, sharing, community building. Wow. This deep dive, really looking into Udhiyah and Qurbani, it truly shows how one single act of worship can have such far-reaching effects. It connects history, deep personal faith, and the wider community in such a powerful, meaningful way. It's clearly so much more than just a ritual. It feels like a living testament to these enduring values. So maybe something to reflect on as you go about your day. Think about how these acts of generosity, of remembrance, acts rooted in such profound faith, how they continue to shape and unite communities all across the globe. How do traditions like this, passed down for centuries, still resonate today? How do they manage to transcend language, borders, and time itself to foster connection and compassion? Something to ponder. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration today. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring.